The meaning of implicit bias. Implicit biases are assumptions, beliefs, and rules of thumb in our minds, often based on our experiences, but that may not be reasonable or accurate. Bias affects all thinking, and it is not always bad, but we should be aware of it. This is because the brain, as with a computer, loves speed. And to be as fast as possible, the brain loves to take shortcuts. These decision shortcuts, known as heuristics, can help us make judgments at much greater velocities. But as with taking shortcuts when driving, they can get us into trouble. Let me show you how by way of a personal example. Simon Sinek is one of my favourite writers and speakers, and I was listening to Simon Sinek give a talk about work and how we should love what we do. As ever, Simon's message was heartfelt and compelling. There was so much I could agree with. I generally do love my work. The funny thing was that I had a little niggle in the back of my head telling me that something was not quite right. So I watched it again. Afterwards, reflecting on what Mr. Sinek was saying, I was able to identify what had got my spider sense tingling. There were a couple of statements he made that I re-examined. One of them was, "It is a God-given right that we should love where we work." As Simon says those words, my heart is saying, "Amen, brother," but my head is saying, is that actually true? So let's use Simon Sinek's own advice and start with why when we think about his own statement. The statement itself is a rhetorical device, used for emphasis and emotional response, and in those terms it achieves its ends. But that leaves the question, why do I want the statement to be true even if it isn't a fact? This is where we come to the flaws in my processing. My thinking is being influenced by multiple biases at once. The first thing I'm experiencing is the halo effect. In other words, I'm likely to agree with whatever Simon Sinek says because I like and respect him. I expect him to be right. There is also an immediate anchoring effect too, because when I see Simon Sinek, I think of Start With Why, a book I really enjoy. Therefore, I'm expecting to like what he says. This leads to an acquiescence bias, so I'm more likely to agree with any statement Simon makes. Sinek is also a leadership guru and talks about things I care about, so I'm also suffering from in-group bias, where I favour other leadership geeks as we are all of the same tribe. Hot on the heels of these preconceptions is groupthink. The interviewer and the people in the audience all seem to be nodding and smiling. I want to go along with everybody else. What's more, no one is challenging what he is saying, so there's also a bystander effect. I'm not going to make myself look stupid and say something that might be wrong if everyone else is agreeing with him. Next is optimism bias. Simon Sinek is a self-proclaimed optimist, so it's not surprising that his message is alluringly positive. Also, I want it to be true, as I want to love all my work all the time, so confirmation bias creeps in. I hold to the belief that we can love work, so I'm also under belief bias as well. I'm also suffering from the just world hypothesis by expecting things to be fair and for people to get what they deserve. Unfortunately, that is not reality. That one line is wrapped up with a host of other statements that I agree with, so there is also a framing effect. The validity of the talk as a whole influences the context in which I judge any single phrase. And there is more. As I learn more about leadership, the more I realise how much I don't know. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I want to learn, and Simon Sinek is an expert, so I naturally doubt the limits of my own knowledge. When I think about my own abilities, I have a negativity bias and suffer from imposter syndrome. Therefore, I doubt myself even more. So I experience over a dozen cognitive biases in just a couple of minutes, and that's just the ones I can easily identify. The takeaway point is that bias affects us all the time, even when thinking about something good from someone we like. So if we want to think clearly and make effective decisions, we need to be more aware. We cannot avoid cognitive bias, but by being conscious of our thought processes, we can reflect and critique our own thinking. If you would like any further help with this or any other subject, then do click on the related links or head over to the website at www.therightquestions.co.